Good afternoon. This is Randy Brunson with Centurion Advisor Group here on this episode of Stewarding Family Wealth. So glad that you could join us today or listening to this podcast wherever you pick up your podcast episodes. With us in the studio today are Drew Gilbreath with Sutter, Mclellan Gilbreath Insurance. I said that right, Drew?
That's correct.
Okay, good. Glad to have you with us today. And also in the studio is Cole Porter with Porter Steel. Cole, glad you're here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you for joining us today. I know both of you have very full lives. Both of you have children at home, right?
Yep. Indeed.
And we're recording this in December, so this is a Christmas season. Are they excited?
A little bit.
A little bit. You got two boys. They're ready to go, aren't they?
They are. They're chomping at the bit.
Yeah, mine definitely.
Oh, good.
The toddler stages, right? So.
That's right. Well, in our work, and let me just talk for a minute about why I invited the two of you to join us today. In our work at Centurion Advisor Group, we work with a lot of business owners, helping make financial decisions, overseeing retirement plans, helping prepare the next generation, some of these kinds of things. All right. And both of you are second-generation owners. Drew, you've been in that role for how long? When did you step into that role as a second-generation owner?
Into 2014.
2014. Mm-hmm. So you've been there for almost 8 years now.
Correct.
And Cole, you are literally in the throes of becoming a second-generation owner.
That's correct.
Yes. And that's the plan and the hope and the dream, right?
That's right. In the throes is a good way of putting it.
You can talk as much or as little about that as you want to, because I know that just a lot of moving parts, many of which need to stay behind the scenes until we wrap all this up. But I wanted to hear from the two of you from a second generation perspective, because many of the clients that we serve, they have children involved in the business, and all of us can go through the mechanical aspects, if you will, of building a large financial statement, overseeing a large financial statement, transferring assets to the next generations. There are all kinds of ways to do that are part of just prudent personal business planning. But transferring a business across generations or transferring values across generations in a way that's sustainable, that's a very different thing. Okay, that's working with people, and I'm curious. I don't have any answers. I study this like you guys do. How do you do this well, right? How do you live your life well and do these kinds of things well? So that's the reason I invited you guys to join us today. I wanted to hear from your experience, learn from your experience about how that's working for you, what you've seen that's worked well, and changes you've made, some of those kind of things. But let's start with stories. Drew, you grew up in Gwinnett County.
I did. I was born and raised in Norcross. My father actually still lives in Peachtree Corners. Been a Gwinnett County kid most of my life, and joined our business after one small stint at an insurance company. Came into our insurance agency in 2004, and went from there. Good.
So did you go to Norcross High School?
I did not. I went to St. Pius.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I know exactly where that is. It's in DeKalb County, right off of 85. Mm-hmm. So, good. I'm not sure I've asked you. You go to Georgia? Or
I went to Georgia.
Okay.
And
go Dogs.
Yeah, go Dogs. And I got an insurance degree, which back then wasn't that common. Now Georgia's the number one school in the country for it. So they've come a long way. And I never questioned going into the family business. It was always something that my dad kind of brought me in early. Mm-hmm. I was an intern in high school, things like that.
Right.
Then through college, and then took one small stint at an insurance company to kind of learn the other way it works, the other side of the ball, if you will.
Right.
And then joined the agency.
Okay. All right, good. So you're right. Georgia does have a well-known risk management insurance program. And don't they offer a master's in risk management?
I believe they do, yes.
Yeah, I think they do. And interesting, Georgia's known for the risk management program and also for the veterinarian program. I'm not sure what the correlation between those two is, but you guys have probably met people that came through that program. It's also well respected, but good. So Georgia, and Cole, you went to Georgia as well.
I did, yeah. I grew up in Loganville, Gwinnett County side of Loganville. Went to South Gwinnett High School, and the business is older than I am, so it's always, I call it my older brother, because it eats just like a kid needs to eat. It's always there, and so I never thought that I would. I didn't know exactly what I would do as far as how the business goes. And my dad always told us that he never wished our business on anyone. He didn't wish it on any of his kids. And so Because it has been really, it's stressful and it's hard. I mean, there's definitely benefits and rewards to it, but I've definitely learned that from him, that it's definitely a sacrifice. And it takes, the right vision and the right dreaming and the right work ethic to be able to handle it. So I worked in and out of the business my whole life, just in various times, whether it was in high school in the shop or in college doing administrative work, and then did project management, and then kind of worked my way up from there after college. So.
Okay. So it sounds like each of you, just because the business was there as you were coming up, as you're growing up, and high school or college, there was always work to do, and so forth. So your dad, Cole, his thought was he didn't really build it to give to you and your brothers, or didn't really have any designs on transferring it to you.
Yeah, I don't think specifically. I don't think that was his idea. I think when I showed the willingness to take over in that role, that's really the first time that he realized that it would be something that I would even be interested in doing. So, yeah, it's probably a little bit of a different planning or lack of planning on his part compared to Drew's situation.
Right. But it's just turned out here since you've come back to Porter Steel, 4 years ago?
About 5 years ago.
Almost 5 years ago. That's just come to a point where it's a good time for the transition for your dad to sell and you to buy Porter Steel.
That's right.
Okay, good. What about your dad? Was his, whether it was a conversation or unspoken expectation, was his thought, hey, he'd love to have you come in and be a part of the business and take over for him at some point? Or
I don't think taking over was something that was thought of initially. The insurance industry, just demographically, at his age, was turning over just about the time I got into it. And there were a lot of people selling out, a lot of people merging in with larger firms, and it was never a question of, are we going to do this, or am I going to become ownership? It was really if he was ever going to stop, because sometimes, we have agent friends now that are still at it at late 70s, 80-year-old. They just don't give it up, and because it's not something you necessarily have to if you can have the right support staff around you. Because it's a very relationship driven business.
Right.
It does require a certain amount of knowledge and expertise that once you acquire it, and you can think in that way, it's not rocket science anymore.
Right.
So he did finally decide to hang it up, and we wanted to transition. A lot of people were asking, what's the agency's plan? And we decided to buy in, and it's been very good. Good.
When did your dad start Sutter Mclellan Gilbreath?
He started Gilbreath and Associates in '77, so it's also older than me. And then he merged with Sutter Mclellan in '92, and he bought out the owners of Sutter Mclellan in 2010, and then sold to me and my partner in 14.
So you both grew up in being around the family business, or in the family business, or that was just part of the family life was that business. So your dad started Porter Steel in 1980 or 81, did I hear you say?
83.
83. Tell us what Porter Steel does.
Yeah, so we're a structural steel miscellaneous metals fabricator and erector, principally serving the construction industry. We also do have a manufacturing division where we manufacture steel parts or processes for other manufacturers.
Okay.
And that serves more, the manufacturing industry as opposed to the construction, just to diversify.
Okay, good. And what, about 75 employees, something like that?
About 75 right now.
SMG Insurance, a couple of owners, you've got 35 or 40?
33 employees.
33 employees, split between producers, salespeople, and...
We have nine salespeople, and the rest is internal staff.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. And you've also been just like your dad did a merger and so on and so forth, you've also been in acquisition mode and built the agency that way to some degree.
Correct.
Okay, good. There's opportunity for that. There's always, in any business, I believe there's opportunity for acquisition. If someone didn't do what your dad did, which was to find an internal transition, you always sell to outsiders. There's always someone willing to buy it, seems like.
Sure.
So, yeah. So, Drew, I know you've told me that you went and worked for an insurance company for a few years out of school. All
yes.
Right. Was that something that your dad said, hey, if you want to come to work for me, you need to go get this experience? Or how did that?
It was absolutely that way. He kind of explained it as if in football terms.
Okay.
Go play defense for a minute so you know how to play quarterback. And it's you get to see how they operate, why they do what they do. And we were, at the time, the largest insurance agency for Zurich small business at the time.
Okay.
And he arranged for me to go down there in an interview and get a position. I worked for about 11 months down there, and then decided, if I'm not moving up here, if I'm not going to do anything else, let's get started. Because going back into the agency was a sales position, and that was something I was ready to get started for.
That time on the company side, though, gave you some insight into how the companies work and what they do, and
absolutely,
yeah.
It's very much, you understand why they do what they do, so that when you're on the other side of the negotiations with your client's interest at hand, you know why they want what they want, and you can help turn it into layman's terms for the client, get better policies, better pricing, better insurance programs overall. You also see why kind of the ebbs and flows of the business happen the way they do.
And I was asking Cole about Porter Steel, so tell us about SMG, because insurance is a very broad.
Sure.
Tell us a little more about SMG, what their focus is, and culture as you understand it.
We're an independent insurance agency. We serve about 95% of our clientele is in Georgia, but we do work outside in the southeast, outside the state, and we have 33 employees. Primary focus is in commercial insurance. We also do employee benefits along with that commercial P&C insurance.
Okay.
And then we have a personal insurance department as well.
All right, so a fairly diversified insurance agency with a big focus on commercial lines.
Correct.
All right, good. Talking about your company experience, have you found when you screen and filter for new hires, or let's say you're in conversation with a smaller agency where the principal it's time for him or her to sell, do you look for employees that have worked for insurance companies that might have that experience? Does that matter, or?
It doesn't really matter from an agency standpoint. If you're going into sales, it does help. It is something, a claims adjuster, an underwriter that understands what the insurance company is looking for. That is very helpful. From the staff side, from the service side, it's more about being in a customer service position. Have you dealt with the public, for a long time? Do you have that customer service demeanor? Can you solve problems without losing your cool? Those are more important than just the kind of the nuts and bolts of underwriting that you get at an insurance company.
Interpersonal skills.
Absolutely.
How do you hire? We could go so many directions with this conversation, but I think all three of us live with us every day, right? So how do you screen and filter and hire for that?
The biggest thing is multiple interviews with multiple parties. I phone screen all of our applicants, and then bring in my business partner for either COVID made us do a lot of virtual interviews, which was pretty difficult to figure out if you like someone on video or not,
right?
And if they're going to be a good fit, or we bring them in person, and then finally we bring in with the team they're going to be working with. If they're going to be in our personal insurance department, we sit them down across from those people,
right? And
those employees get to screen them, ask questions, find out if they fit. We have a very strong culture, very good culture. I feel we're a great place to work. We try very hard to be very good to our employees, and we try very hard to keep the bad apples out. You don't want anyone to spoil it, and we've had some of those in the past. I mean, it's hard to avoid that always, and you can see definitely the impact it has on everybody when you make a bad hire.
Right. So you've probably both heard that phrase, slow to hire, quick to fire, and you've probably both experienced that, where if you take your time, and do everything you can to make a good hire, it reduces the incidence of having to cut someone loose. You're a little different role, Cole. I mean, you're about to step into ownership, is what we expect, but you've had some influence over hiring. Drew, with you, probably the majority of your staff, whether it's producers or internal support people, the majority of them have some customer-facing responsibilities.
Absolutely.
And then a few that don't.
Correct.
Yeah, but most do. But Cole, you're in a very different. You're in a manufacturing environment.
Sure. Yeah.
So in terms of just what have you found that works in terms of whether you're hiring client or customer facing team members, or company leadership, or the guys and ladies that work in the shop that just get the job done and get things put together? How do you hire well?
Well, right now that's a really loaded question because of the labor market, but particularly in our production, whether it's a fabricator in the shop or a erector in the field, iron worker, or a CDL driver, there's a lot of different positions where the skill and the experience really matters. We're definitely in a very specialized function within our industry, as far as, you can't just bring in anybody to be a welder, or you can't just bring in anybody to even be a project manager on a structural steel job. There's a lot of there is some crossover that works when you find someone who's just a really good project management style person. But if they don't have that knowledge of the industry, it is difficult to be successful quickly on anything we do, really. So the experience in our industry is a really big plus because of all those things, just the sheer load of knowledge that it takes to know about what we do and be able to execute that well. But certainly we look for people that align in our values. Currently we're working on completely revamping our mission and our vision and values. And I think that's one thing where we've been a little bit weak in the past, as far as not clearly telling our employees what we stand for. I think we've always done a good job of saying, like, hey, we're we serve the Lord and we want to be known as a Christian business with high integrity. Right. But beyond that, we haven't done a great job of laying out exactly what we're doing every day and what we're working for. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of improvement in our culture when we clearly define those things and give people just those values to stand by, so that they know that even in their work, even if they don't have some of the skills, they don't have some of the knowledge, that if they're standing by the values, they can get there. If they are missing some of those things and they also are missing the values, well, then it's probably not a good fit. But I think that that's just a challenge that every business goes through. And unfortunately, with us being so specialized, it is a lot more difficult to find the right people for right positions, especially when the market is the way it is right now, with everybody leaving for $1, or not really seeing the long-term picture. And like Drew said, we really try to take care of our employees and make sure that they are cared for, beyond just getting a paycheck. And so it's hard to communicate that in just a very short period of time without seeing the family culture and being here as a part of our family. And we really do consider all of our employees as part of our family.
Skill set on the one hand, sort of attitude and cultural fit on the other. But any number of your team members are part of the skilled trades. Welders, experienced structural steel, skilled trades, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I don't know the particular.
You can say welder, fabricator, fitter, welder, all those things.
Okay, good. Thank you for bailing me out there. Those words. So they really need that skill set, and I'm guessing if you have a place for a helper, that someone that's fresh out of high school or technical school that can step into a helper role and train, become a journeyman, that's fine. But at some point, you also need the journeyman that actually know how to step in and get the job done from the day they're hired, right?
Absolutely. And we've been very successful at bringing guys out of high school that just align on the value side or see the opportunity, and then they are sponges and absorb everything, and then we teach them not only the skills of the industry, but how we do things. And so oftentimes they're very successful starting from the bottom and going all the way up. We've got several folks in management that did exactly that. But yes, you nailed it with, sometimes we do need the guy that is just an expert already, right? And that's sometimes hard to find.
What about you, Drew? The insurance world is a very they're just, the depth and breadth is significant. So when you're hiring, not producers, but when you're hiring internally, because 25% of the people are outside and the rest are inside. So when you're hiring for inside and you're weighing the, attitude, cultural fit, interpersonal fit versus skill set, how do you go through that decision making?
Well, the insurance industry is like you said, a vast world, but the employment candidates right now it's pretty thin, and I attribute it because maybe insurance isn't as sexy as some other career paths, but there aren't a ton of people doing that. And what we found is we went from an average age of almost 60 just 3-4 years ago to now about 40 years old, just by retirement and having to go out and seek new people. So a lot of times the experience is less, and it's more about what Cole was talking about.
Okay.
Do you value the culture? Do you have the right attitude? Are you teachable? I mean, insurance is a teachable subject matter.
Right.
It's, do you have everything else? Because there aren't many people with 20 years experience that are out there looking. They've probably found a home. We have several that have been with us that long or longer. I have several still remaining work moms, as I call them. They had Happy Meal toys in their desk for me when I was that age. That's how far back we go.
Yeah.
And you really have to make sure you've got the right people, because my business is something where we can teach you the nuts and bolts.
Right.
It's about, are you willing and able to do it right?
That's right. That's right. It's a fascinating mix, because we've experienced the same thing. It's a fascinating mix of technical competence, knowing what you're doing on the technical side, and personal relationships. That's as far as I've gotten with it. I know that much, and how to do that well, I don't know. That's why I'm here asking questions, so I can learn.
I'll add to that, because I think, going back to when there's a cultural, someone who doesn't fit, with your culture, or who is what they'll say is a cancer in the employee morale. A lot of times you run into the situation of like cutting your hand off, like you don't, the person's bringing a skill value, but yet they're ruining morale. And I think back at some of those situations where we've let someone go, or they've left soon after when we were considering letting them go. And you just look back and you say, man, that was so good that they ended up leaving, because the damage that they were doing, not, maybe you couldn't put that in numbers and on paper exactly what the damage is that they were doing, but when they left, you could just see how much it improved the whole team. And so I think every time I've looked back on a situation like that, I always say, like, that was the right move, or I wish I'd done it sooner, because I can acknowledge that it's important that people want to be at your workplace. That they want to be there. They want to fellowship with those that are working with them. And if you take that away, it becomes just a paycheck and just a job, and it just ruins everything. So I just think that's a really good lesson learned on my part for those situations.
So if you were giving 2 or 3 pieces of advice to your peers and colleagues that own and manage and run businesses that have employees, 2 or 3 pieces of advice about hiring well, taking care of the team well, what would they be?
I would say share your vision and get buy-in on your vision, so that people know where you're going, and make those hiring decisions based on people that want to go with you. That'd be one thing. I would say never underestimate the value of morale and they say, one bad apple ruins the whole bunch, right? And so there's a lot of other metaphors we could use, but that's one thing that I think is really true in business, especially if you have people working closely together, is making sure that you protect your employees and their work life and how they feel about their job. And then I would say, instead of trying to figure out everything in the market and all the economic factors that we can't control, just be the best at what you do and create the best business to work for, so that you'll never have a problem with getting good people to come be a part of your team. I think if we become the best steel fabricator in Atlanta or in the Southeast, then we won't ever have a problem getting welders or getting project managers, because we'll have that reputation and we'll have that culture that they want to be a part of. If we're constantly worried about, there's not enough welders in the market for all the welding that has to go on, then we're kind of looking at the bottom of the barrel. I want to be on the top of the barrel.
Even maybe focus on being a destination employer then.
That's right.
Yeah. What about you? 2 or 3 pieces of advice you could share?
That's very good advice. And the one thing I would add to it is getting the input from your staff when you're hiring into their environment, making sure they buy in. We get a lot of our employees through word of mouth, through our own employees. Right. They say, this is the greatest place, and they jump ship, and we candidly pull the employee aside and say, are you vouching for this person, or is this just they said they wanted to send their resume? And they say, no, I think this person's great. And they're not going to say that if they don't believe it. And,
right.
and we get a lot of people that way. I would be patient. I mean, just the old adage, slow to hire, quick to fire. We take our time. We do. It is, we've had some times during COVID where we had to move quick, and find some people. We had a lot of retirements during that period, just for health and safety reasons. And you saw us kind of get away from what we've been doing, and now we're back to, this is a great place to be, and it's not open to everybody. So you can really be selective.
Yeah.
And take your time.
Good advice. Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that are listening, we are going to wrap up this first episode, but we are on the air today with Cole Porter of Porter Steel and Drew Gilbreath of Sutter Mclellan Gilbreath Insurance Agency. I will slow down and say it well. But we're on the air today with Drew and Cole. They are here with us. But stay tuned for the second episode. We are going to talk more about what they have learned as second-generation owners and what the business looks like now compared to how it was when they're, in this case, when their dads ran it. So stay tuned for that. There's going to be some fascinating insight that you're going to hear. But we're going to wrap up this episode of Stewarding Family Wealth here on Gwinnett Business RadioX with the stellar Mike and Amanda. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you soon.